Welcome back to my channel. I'm Cyrus, and this is Cyrus Codes, where we talk about engineering, engineering management, and career advice in general for engineers, whether you're just starting out or you've been an engineer for years. Hopefully, I can help you make the next step in your career or figure out how to solve some of the problems that you're facing in your career right now. Today, we're going to talk about one-on-ones. Now, one-on-ones are a really important part of my life as a manager. They're an important part of my life as a report, too. It's a thing to remember is all managers have managers, too. And there are lots of different ways to do them. There's no one right answer, and actually one-on-ones can in some cases be a pretty controversial topic. There's not a ton of agreement as to how often you should do them, what you should talk about, and all of those kinds of little details that, in my opinion, can really make or break the success of a one-on-one as a ritual that you have in your life. I figured today something that would be helpful is to get really specific about how I do one-on-ones, what I want to get out of them, the kinds of questions that I ask, and the expectations that I set with my reports when we're meeting for the first time or in our first couple of sessions. I think the best way to do that is to actually talk through the one-on-one doc template that I use. I'm actually going to share it down in the description of this video so you can take it and borrow it, remix it, and use it as you will. But I ask 5 specific questions at the top of that one-on-one doc to kind of jog the minds of my reports. And I also have a little paragraph that kind of sets expectations of what I'm hoping we'll get out of that time and what I think we'll use it for. Just to set the stage a little bit, for me, I like to do one-on-ones every week with the folks who report to me. Today, that's about 6 to 9 one-on-ones per week. There's no right or wrong amount. Teams are growing and changing all the time, but I really like to meet with the folks who report to me every week so that I can make sure that I'm really tapped into all the different things that are being worked on within the part of the engineering organization that I'm responsible for. When we meet, we always meet for half an hour. It's actually 25 minutes, just so I have time to move between my meetings, but it's enough time to really talk about at least a few meaty topics, and I find that if I've set the tone correctly, we use all of the time almost every time. So, the 3 things that I tell my reports and that I have at the top of my one-on-one doc are that I want to use our one-on-one time for them to do 3 things. Number 1, share the results of their work, not status updates, the results of their work. This ties into my other video about managing up, which I'll put in the description below too. The second thing is that I want to have a continuous focus on career development. So I want to hear about those moments where maybe there was a challenge that they overcame that relates to the goals that we've set for this current cycle. And the third thing, this is super important, is feedback. That's upward feedback to me or to others, lateral feedback to their peers, and also feedback to cross-functional folks, maybe product managers or designers that they found themselves working with, creating an environment for continuous feedback. That's really a video on its own. So with that table set, there are 5 questions that I use to kind of jog their minds, things that they can use to refer to if they're thinking to themselves before our one-on-one, oh, not that much has actually happened this week. So what are those 5 questions? The first question is really open-ended and super simple. It's, what's been on your mind this week? This question is very open-ended, and it's open-ended by design. I want to make sure that if there's something maybe from the person's personal life or something that happened in a professional context that's really been dragging them down, even if it doesn't relate to results or their goals or feedback, I just want to create a little bit of space for them to be able to talk about that. You never know what's really weighing someone down, and just creating room, ambiguous space for them to be able to talk about anything that's on their mind is a super important way to kick things off. The second question that I really like is, how happy and productive did you feel this week, and when? This is a really fun question to ask for me because nowadays I'm not super close to the day-to-day work of everyone who I'm responsible for. And so when I ask a question like this, it gives me a little glimpse into awesome moments that have happened and can actually create almost by accident, moments of feedback for other people that I can pass on. And the person who I'm talking to might not realize it, but they might share a story with me that's actually like really positive feedback or speaks to the goals or the development areas of someone else on their team. And so talking about where they felt productive not only lets me know kind of what's working really well for them and what kinds of things actually make them happy in their work, but is also a really unique kind of side channel for me to get positive feedback about the people that they work with every day. The third question, and this one has a little bit of an art to it, is where did you feel friction in the last week? And I encourage people to keep in bounds things as microscopic as an individual conversation, all the way out to a PR that they were working on, a meeting that they were in. I want to make sure that friction isn't just something about their team's process and how they get things done, but can also be moments of interpersonal tension that they've had with someone else. Now, I've seen this question go a bunch of different ways. I've seen in some cases it be as simple as getting feedback about a particular process that the team is following, all the way to the other side where I learn after maybe peeling back a couple of layers that this person's actually having real interpersonal issues with another person on their team, something that they might not have readily brought up, but after framing the conversation as friction that they're feeling, and again, asking a few questions, it becomes clear that it's really important for me as a manager to jump in and offer advice, offer triaging the situation. This question in a lot of ways ends up being an opportunity for me to get feedback that I can channel to team leads that I work with, an opportunity to get feedback about other people and whether maybe they're stunted in some areas of growth that we've identified. In a lot of ways, this is actually the question that is the most important for me as I'm figuring out how I can help my reports. Right? It kind of makes sense if you think about it. I'm soliciting explicitly constructive criticism about all different kinds of things, and then using that not only individually but also in aggregate to figure out where there are hot spots in the organization that I work in. The fourth question focuses on the team, on the squad. So in this case, think of it as the more local or specific group of people that this engineer is working with. At Betterment, we organize into squads. So maybe this is like 4 to 6 engineers, a product manager, and a designer who are working really closely together every day. So this question really focuses on the productivity and the effectiveness of the team. So the question is stated, what's amplifying the team's productivity and what's dragging it, is a really interesting one because sometimes the answer deals with tensions or perhaps miscommunications between the engineering, the product, and the design kind of legs of the stool or sides of the triangle that are all working together every day. But what I've found is that it's actually a really unique way to get upward feedback. That's to say, a really common thing that comes up when I ask people a question like this is feedback about the strategy that we're following as an organization in the quarter. So maybe it's that, Cyrus, look, I feel like we have too much on our plate this quarter. I feel like we have a current project and it's running a little bit over time, and I'm worried that it's going to knock the rest of our quarterly plans off track. So this is super helpful because I can get out in front of any planning issues that we might have, go talk with the product manager, go talk with other stakeholders, and make sure that as I'm getting that feedback from my engineers, that I'm armed with the right context to go and affect change or try to reset expectations with the people who depend on us. It's also a great way to see if the things that your team's talking about in retrospectives, maybe you do retrospectives, maybe you don't, but the idea that if there are any commitments that your team has made to make improvements over time, asking this question is a good way to see if those things are still coming up, right? It's almost an accountability mechanism to ask the question, are we making the improvements that we promised that we would make, or are there lingering issues that are still coming up? It can also reveal super tactical things, as you might predict. It can help me learn that when a certain person is out of office, code review slows down, or certain kinds of knowledge are absent, and it wasn't until that person left that the team kind of realized it, right? So this can highlight for me where maybe there are skill or knowledge gaps within the teams that affect productivity of the team directly. And then last but not least, the fifth question. I always ask this the same way because I want it to feel like a question that people have heard before, that feels comfortable, because on its face, it can actually be kind of an uncomfortable question. All right, I'll skip right to it. The question is, what feedback do you have for me, your manager, and where can I lean in and where can I lean out? The nature of this question is ideally to get super direct feedback from my reports. Now, it's not often that folks are willing to kind of sit down right in front of you and give you really direct feedback. They're also not always ready, right? They have a whole bunch of stuff going on in their lives, and sometimes that kind of feedback is easier to give through a more structured, either quarterly or annual review process. But this second part of the question, where can I lean in and where should I lean out, is really a useful one for me because it gives people an opportunity to say, actually, I was hoping that I could get your help with something, or actually this situation has come up and I'm not totally sure how to deal with it. I'd really like you to just kind of lean in, at least with me in this conversation right now, and help me flesh it out. It almost explicitly gives people permission who might be trying to prove that they're capable of handling something on their own, or who have a question that maybe they don't want to feel like they're bugging me, which of course they never are. It just gives them that explicit permission to say, like, where can I in particular help you right now? Now, on the flip side of that, where can I lean out? This is a useful question too, because sometimes people want explicitly the opportunity to kind of handle something on their own. And oftentimes for me as a manager, I know what kinds of responsibilities someone's currently taking on, what I've delegated to them, or a leadership challenge that I'm currently putting them in. And so I know when I ask, where do you want me to lean out, or where do you want me to give you more room to tackle the challenges you're facing, I typically have a specific thing that I'm asking that in the context of. And so it can sound like an ambiguous question at first, but I find that it's usually tied into something specific. So as an example, let's say that someone who reports to me is running a project right now. And for whatever reason, recently, I've been more involved with the project than not. Maybe it's because there are certain growth areas that I know they're focusing on, and I want to make sure that I'm there being supportive of them when they face that category of challenge. Maybe a person So I'll give you an example. Typically, I know what someone is actually actively working on, or what challenges specifically they might be facing. So let's say that I've challenged someone to build leadership skills by leading a project. But as they started leading that project, we agreed that something they were going to need support on is having difficult conversations with product about what the requirements are. Maybe they don't feel as comfortable pushing back on product as other people do with more experience. So let's say, for example, throughout their project, I've been playing a tactical support role and being there in conversations where they're talking with product, not to dominate the conversation, but maybe to help guide it towards a more accurate representation of the concerns that this person's trying to voice. Now, if I'm talking to them in a one-on-one and I'm asking a question like, where can I lean out? I'm not just going to ask that in general. I'm actually going to contextualize that around this specific issue. So I might say, listen, the conversations that we've been having with product have been great, and I can tell that you're getting more comfortable in pushing back on requirements. But I want to make sure that you feel like I'm giving you enough room. Would you feel comfortable if I maybe let you take the next couple conversations with product and you can tell me how they go and where you felt challenged? Because by now I think you've seen a couple good examples of how you can guide the conversation towards what you're trying to achieve, right? So it's in some ways giving them permission to tell me where I can lean out, and in other ways, just an opportunity to create a conversation around where I might actually just want myself to give them a little bit more room and kind of let them stand on their own 2 feet in the context of a particular challenge that I know they're facing. So, Those are the 5 questions that I talk about in every one-on-one. And again, you don't always get to all of them. Sometimes you end up having a really specific agenda that dominates the time, and ideally it does stick to the 3 principles of talking about results, talking about feedback, and talking about career growth. But these 5 questions are an awesome way to make sure you always have something really valuable to talk about with your reports. Again, those 5 in order are: number 1, what's on your mind this week? Number 2, where have you been feeling the most productive and what did that actually look like? Number 3, where are you feeling friction, whether it's in conversations, meetings, execution of your work, etc. Number 4, what's really accelerating the team's productivity and what's dragging it down? And lastly, number 5, what feedback do you have for me, your manager, and where can I lean in and where do you want me to give you more room? Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel or go ahead and press that like button too. It'd be super helpful for me. And if you like this video, check out my others. Again, on this channel, we talk a lot about engineering, the career of engineering, being a better engineering manager, and hopefully it'll help you on your path too. See you later.